Russian Formalism, a revolutionary literary theory that changed the way we look at texts, stories, and art itself. Today, we'll dive into this movement and explore the key thinkers behind it. Russian Formalism was a literary movement that emerged in the early 20th century, around the 1910s, and continued into the 1930s. Unlike earlier approaches to literature that focused on the author's biography, historical context, or social meaning, Russian formalists believed the text itself held the key to its interpretation. Their main goal was to understand the how of literature, how a work of art creates its effects on the reader. Rather than asking what a story means, formalists focused on how a story is constructed. They broke down texts into formal elements: language, structure, style, and literary devices like metaphor, rhyme, and plot construction. Literature, for them, was like a machine, each part working together to create an effect. Defamiliarization, or ostranenie, one of the core ideas. This concept, introduced by Viktor Shklovsky, refers to how literature makes the familiar strange. Through unique uses of language, form, or narrative, everyday objects and ideas are seen in a new light, forcing the reader to rethink them. Literariness. This is what makes a text literary in the first place. Formalists argued that a text's literariness lies in its use of distinctive devices and techniques, like rhythm, metaphor, or narrative structure, that set it apart from everyday communication. Fabula and sujet. These terms refer to the difference between the raw material of a story, fabula, and its arrangement in the narrative, sujet. Think of it as the distinction between a chronological sequence of events and how those events are presented in a book or film. The key figures behind Russian formalism. Let's talk about the key figures behind Russian formalism. Viktor Shklovsky, often seen as the most prominent formalist, Shklovsky developed the concept of defamiliarization. His essay Art as Technique, 1917, emphasized that art's purpose is to make the familiar seem unfamiliar, to shock the reader into seeing the world anew. Roman Jakobson, a linguist and literary theorist, Jakobson applied structuralist methods to the study of poetry and language. He famously said, "The object of study in literary science is not literature, but literariness." He later helped bridge formalism with structuralism in his work. Yuri Tinianov, a literary historian and theorist, Tinianov worked on the concept of literary evolution, arguing that literature changes over time due to shifts in form and structure, not external influences like politics or culture. Boris Eichenbaum. Another key figure, Eichenbaum emphasized the scientific approach to literary criticism. He argued that literature should be studied as a system of formal elements, independent of social or historical context. Vladimir Propp. Known for his work on folklore, Propp analyzed Russian folktales and identified 31 narrative functions that make up the structure of all stories. His book, Morphology of the Folktale, became highly influential, especially for structuralists and later literary theorists. Although Russian formalism fell out of favor in the 1930s due to Soviet ideological pressure, its ideas have lived on. It laid the groundwork for structuralism and influenced a range of fields from linguistics to film studies. Modern storytelling techniques, narrative structures in cinema, and even literary studies today still owe a huge debt to the formalists. Their work showed us that it's not just about what a story says, but how it says it. So, to sum up, Russian formalism changed the game by focusing on the structure and technique of literature rather than external meaning. From defamiliarization to fabula and sujet, these ideas continue to influence how we study literature today. Thanks for watching.